So I am going to begin by opening all the parts bags and organizing the parts. I feel it's best to kind of get all these open up since you're kind of going to use these all pretty quickly. This video should go by pretty quick here, guys. And the reason why you want to separate these is because there is a difference between the front and the rear shocks. I do want to point out that the bottom assembly that holds both O-rings and the shock shaft guide are already pre-built. Now I'm going to grab my front shock shaft, which is the shorter one out of the two links, and I'm going to begin to organize my parts. You can also notice that two of the pistons only have one hole. These are for the front shocks. And also, only two of the actual shock balls that go into the ends do not have the taller flanges. So with all these parts, we can go ahead and begin to assemble our front shocks according to the manual. Now one quick tip is to kind of hold this with the tip of your finger like so in the guide, and you kind of very patiently have to give it a light squeeze and it pops in. A quick tip is to also rotate the E-clip so that you make sure that it fully seats in. Then you can go ahead and continue to put on your piston and finally hold that piston in place by making sure that this is fully seated into the assembly. Again, guys, take the time to go ahead and double check this assembly. It is common that these clips do not clip in all the way, and what happens is during all the actual shock movement, the E-clip moves its way out, the piston itself gets released from the shaft, and then you pretty much have no dampening, only spring, which makes the car handle horribly. And nothing worse than getting through all this, guys, and being in the middle of a trail, some type of race, and this happens to you. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to build my shocks per the manual. Another useful quick tip is this shock oil is actually included in the kit, guys, but what I normally like to do is I get a little bit of shock oil and I use it abundant amount to coat the threads. Now what this is going to do is I'm going to insert it to the cartridge and I'm going to make sure to rotate it lightly as I firmly press, rotating as if it were a screw, and let it slide all the way through. What this is going to ensure you do is, one, be sure that you don't cut the O-rings and you're going to have future leaking problems, and two, it's going to coat those O-rings with oil. Now, through time, oil will get down to the O-rings and lubricate themselves, but making sure that these are pre-lubricated and you get rid of some of the air in there will make priming and also getting rid of the air bubbles when we assemble the shocks later on. So everything seems to be moving freely there. Next is to grab these TLR shock pliers. These make it really easy to thread on these rod ends. Another quick tip is to grab the dike end of your pliers and slowly crimp the bottom of the shaft. But again, we don't really recommend doing this, guys, because that crimp can actually cut the O-ring and cause leaking issues. So everything moves really freely there. Then we can go ahead and hold our ball in place and use our needle nose pliers to pop this in. With this complete, everything seems to be okay. I can go ahead and begin on the other side. And again, guys, these TLR pliers are a huge help. I'll be sure to include the link to these pliers in the description of the video, so feel free to click on that and get you set. Once you guys go ahead and unthread the shock cap from the shock body, you want to grab the corresponding body with the correct shock shaft length, and you can tell here that it's pretty easy to cross thread these, guys. It takes a few times for me to actually kind of reverse thread this and then find the right thread to begin. Now, once you guys do this, it should take very little effort to get those all the way in. I'm going to go ahead and continue to finish all of these here. And once you guys complete that step, I want to make sure that nobody, again, we see this often, that you never use pliers to grab onto the body. What this will do is this will actually make your body into an oval shape and you'll get really bad performance. You want to make sure everything stays smooth. These don't take much force or they don't need to be over tightened to hold the oil, guys. I'm going to ensure that all these move smooth. They all do. And then what I like to do is I normally like to grab a clean rag and I use both ends of the rag. The one to grab a good hold of that and then the threads, and just hand tight works great on these guys. Again, you don't need to use pliers or any type of tools to assemble these or even disassemble these. There's plenty of plastic engagement and the threads are fine enough to where the oil will not work through and you won't have any leaking problems. Next step is to prepare the shock collars, and all you do is you grab the thicker, larger O-ring with your shock collar and you actually simply just kind of start by pressing the corner into it and kind of flexing the rest of it in, and it pops into a recess inside the shock collar. Once you guys get all four of these done, again, very simple to kind of do these guys. You can see that they're kind of easily just pop in. Some people do put a little bit of shock oil on to kind of pre-grease, and it will make it easier to thread. I normally do not do this since that shock oil, even if it's a minor amount, will attract dirt and dust, and it'll actually end up making this tougher to adjust on the trail or on the racetrack. So again, I like to keep these dry. They don't take much effort once they're threaded in. It does take quite a bit of time since it is a fine thread to get good adjustment. And then the second tip is to make sure you guys leave enough room for the shock cap to get tightened onto the body. The next step is to go ahead and grab the 32.5 weight supplied in the kit. This is a great weight to kind of start off your guys' testing, then you guys can tune from there. But what you want to do is you want to fill this to right below the full mark. And then what you like to do is prime or take the air out of the shock by simply slowly moving the shock shaft up and slowly going back down. You can see that huge bubble that just came out of there. Once you guys get that done, you can set these aside and let the air bubbles go completely out of the shock body. Again, I'm going to show this to you on the rear of the shock again. I'm going to fill this up to right below full. And this time I'm going to actually use a table and kind of firmly press the shock body down and then pull the shock shaft back out. You can see the bubbles that just came out. Again, kind of rotating, going back up and then all the way back down again. This normally takes about 3 to 5 times, guys. And then you want to set the actual shock body aside and continue working through all the shock bodies. Again, this does take a little bit of time to kind of go through the entire process. But again, this will ensure that you have awesome performance from your shocks, not only when you first build them, but throughout the entire race season. Now, while all 4 shocks are set aside, it's a good time to start beginning to build the shock caps. And what you want to do is you want to get a plastic shock cap. You want to take the smaller O-ring that comes included in the kit, and you can see how ultimately this O-ring needs to fit down in there. Now, obviously once I slide this back through, the O-ring's actually going to fall out, but you can actually put the O-ring back in there and use your finger or your nail. Be sure not to use anything too sharp like an X-Acto because you do not want to cut the O-ring on accident. I'm a little bit out of frame here, guys, sorry. But that is fully seated in. Again, show you guys again, shock cap goes through, then you can grab the O-ring. Similar to the shock collars, kind of put that in there. There's a natural groove that it sits in down at the very bottom corner. And I just use my nail to kind of make sure to get that seated all the way in. Again, you guys want to make sure these are seated all the way in the back, so you guys make sure you guys get a solid, good seal. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up the other 2, and then I can grab my shock and show you guys the rest of the build. So overall, it took about 5 to 10 minutes to actually get all the air bubbles out of here. You can see it's no more air bubbles inside, clean fluid. I normally like to kind of top it off with fluid if you're missing some. Again, the air bubbles, once they exit the shock body, it will make the fluid level go down. So you want to make sure you always top off with shock fluid. And then you want to grab your pre-built shock caps here that we already did right before this. And you want to lightly thread this on. Again, this shouldn't take much force, guys, at all. And once you start feeling resistance, I normally like to back out about half to a full turn. Then what I do is I slowly, again, make sure I have a rag handy, because you will lose some fluid, slowly work the shock shaft up, and you can see the fluid starting to come out of the shock cap. Again, totally normal, guys. And then normally what I do is, again, I can kind of release another half a turn while I'm holding the shock shaft, and it's going to allow me to continue pushing the shock shaft in with less resistance. Again, holding the shock shaft in place. I'm going to go ahead and turn it out one more half a turn. And I'm actually going to go full turn. And you want to do this until the shock shaft is fully compressed. And making sure that the shock shaft is still fully compressed, then you can tighten up your actual shock cap. You don't want to pull the shock shaft down, because then you're pretty much just introducing air into the shock. So now I'm going to clean this off, and you're going to see that I can not quite there, because you want to be able to make sure the shock shaft goes all the way in without any resistance necessarily. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to unscrew, and then go ahead and push the shock shaft back in. And you can always hear and also feel, guys. This is one of those things that does take a few times and a little bit of experience to get just right. But now that that's in, I was able to get a little bit more fluid out of there. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up. See, now I can push the shock shaft in with minor resistance. Obviously, you're going to feel the resistance of the shock coil and the shock body moving against the piston. But what I mean is there shouldn't be heavy tension. You shouldn't feel the shock get stiffer as it progresses through the stroke. So now that all that's built, nice and clean like so, you can see that it's nice and smooth all the way in, and I get a decent amount of rebound. I like to wipe off all the excess oil, and then to prevent this stuff from ganging up with a bunch of debris, dirt, and kind of making itself into mud, I like to get our Dynamite Magnum Force using a rag. I'm actually going to use a cleaner rag than this. This is kind of my oil rag. Here's a clean rag. I can spray it down, and this will be sure to kind of have a fully clean shock with no type of oil residue, and this shock will remain clean through all the racing weekends and trail work. This is kind of just a quick tip, something really minor that makes cleaning your car a lot easier later on. So now I'm going to go ahead and separate my springs, and then all that you really do here, guys, is you grab your spring, you pull the spring back, insert the actual spring holder, and here we go. I normally like to adjust these so that there's no slack in the spring and everything feels great there. Nothing feels like it's binding, everything feels solid. So that's how you build a shock, guys. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through the other 3 shocks. So with that complete, we're going to go ahead and follow the manual to install our rear shocks. Quick tip here, guys, is always install the bottom end of the shock first. It's a little bit easier to do this with no tension on the shock. So I'm going to go ahead and just slide my screw in. Then I can easily just pop that into the top shock tower. Then another quick tip is these are nylon threaded nuts, so they do not take a lot of force. You don't need to tighten them so much in order for them not to come loose. The reason why you don't want to tighten these too much is since that ball end is plastic, it could squish the plastic and also create the shock to bind. So again, I kind of just go up to the plastic, maybe an eighth of a turn, half of a turn at most, and then you can be confident that that's going to secure your shock in place. Once you're done with both sides, again, making sure not to over tighten these, you can go ahead and flip your twin hammers over, and it's time to insert the lower nuts that also double as a ball ends for your sway bar link. So these simply just get threaded on. Now, since this is metal on metal contact, I do recommend that you guys use a little bit of Loctite on the end of the screw once it's inserted, and then you can thread the nut into the screw, and this will again ensure that this does not come off during the trail. So again, making sure that this is nice and threaded in. I'm going to go back and remove the other side and make sure I put Loctite on this assembly as well. Again, guys, it doesn't take a whole lot of Loctite. A small little dab is enough. If you guys overdo it on Loctite, feel free to kind of use your fingers to clean it off. So then again, I'm going to go ahead and thread the nut into place, into the screw. And as I'm threading that, I will be sure to grab the turnbuckle wrench that comes with the kit, along with my 2mm wrench, and tighten these. And again, guys, this is straight metal to metal contact, so you can use a little bit of force when you snug these up. So I'm going to make sure this is tight. Once you're secure one side, go ahead and move your way over to the other side. And once we secure these, it is the next step to actually pop in the sway bar links. Now, these sway bar links were already measured per the manual to be the same size, and also the ball ends are naturally already facing the correct side. So it's easy for me just to grab that, hold it lightly, and use my needle nose pliers to pop that in, like so. So you want to make sure that once these are popped in, your actual links have complete freedom to move through the travel. If these links are kind of tight, then it could accidentally pop off during a race or a trail run. So again, once these are popped off, you can always check your links. And again, make sure to move everything through its suspension travel and make sure everything moves freely with no interference. And next we can move on to the front shocks, but first we have to remove the screw in order to get the front shock in according to our customization that we did on the servo. So again, guys, since we customized our shifting servo to use a 10 skill size servo, we do need to move the top plate forward a little bit in order to accept the shock. This normally isn't an issue when you use the servo that's normally recommended for the vehicle, but since we're using a bigger servo, this is an issue. So again, I'm just going to kind of flex that over and insert the ends, and then I can flex it again and insert the shock. Again, so it's not that big of a deal if you guys are using a 10 skill size shock, guys. I just did want to make it known that this is somewhat of an interference issue. The good thing is you do have plenty of room to actually use a nut driver and secure your shock in place. Again, making sure not to over tighten these. Go ahead and grab the other nut and tighten up the other end. Again, being sure not to over tighten since they are plastic ball ends. You don't want to squish that plastic and create any type of tension in the shock. So everything looks good there. Next step is to go ahead and re-secure the top plate by using the supplied screw in the kit. And then I'm going to come back and tighten everything up with my wrench. And once I get that all secure, we can go ahead and mount the bottom end of the shocks to the cantilever system. Again, using you have to kind of lift the car up a little bit to kind of get the cantilever to move in the right position. And then you can use a screw and insert the screw in order to hold it in place to the assembly, like so. Go ahead and grab the other side. Again, lifting up the car a little bit to kind of let it go through its down travel and insert the shock, like so. Then I can go ahead and insert the screw. The assembly will hold. Grab my electric screwdriver, again being sure not to tighten it with the electric screwdriver. I always kind of just get these started right before they get nice and snug. And I go back in with my 2mm wrench, or 5/64, they're technically the same size, and get these one final snug. And with this last screw being snug, guys, that is it. This is completed part 5 of the video. Again, everything seems to be working smooth here. Everything goes through its travel with no type of hiccups or binding. The rear sway bar is doing its job of keeping the rear end flat. So with that, guys, thanks so much for following us through the build. Be sure to comment if you have any questions. See you guys later. Bye.